Mr. Richard Hale, don't tell me you are going to believe this black girl over us. We are professional doctors, for crying out loud. This black poor girl cannot heal your daughter, Emily. She is probably here to beg for alms. Leave here, poor black girl. The doctors mocked Naomi Carter. Naomi Carter stared at Emily and said, I can heal her. Just give me a chance. Stick with us on this story, and we bet you wouldn't see the twist coming. The ICU monitor screamed into the darkness. Emily Hale's body convulsed on the sterile white bed, her vacant eyes rolling back as medical staff swarmed around her like desperate bees. The heart rate monitor spiked into dangerous territory. 140, 150, 160 beats per minute. Blood pressure dropping. A nurse's voice cut through the chaos. 80 over 50 and falling. Dr. Morrison, the head of neurology at Manhattan's most prestigious hospital, pressed his fingers against Emily's wrist, feeling her pulse hammer against his skin like a trapped bird. 3 years. 3 years of watching this girl's condition deteriorate, and tonight felt like the end of every failed treatment, every experimental procedure, every miracle that never came. Increase the dosage, he barked. And get me another IV line. Now. Behind the glass wall of the ICU, Richard Hale pressed his palm against the cold surface, his $5,000 suit wrinkled from days of camping in hospital corridors. His reflection stared back at him. A man who'd built a pharmaceutical empire worth $12 billion, who'd crushed competitors and silenced critics, who'd bought politicians and owned patents that saved millions of lives. But none of it mattered. None of his power, none of his money, none of his influence could save the one person who actually mattered. His daughter. His only child. Blind for 3 years and now dying in front of him. Mr. Hale, you need to step back. A security guard touched his shoulder gently. Richard shrugged him off. That's my daughter in there. Sir, the doctors need space to work. I don't care what they need. I need her to live. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that horrible greenish glow that made everyone look like corpses. Richard watched Dr. Morrison inject something into Emily's IV line. Her convulsions slowed. The monitor's shrill alarm softened to a steady, ominous beep, but her eyes remained empty, sightless, just like they'd been for 1,095 days. Outside the ICU's main entrance, where the antiseptic smell of the hospital mixed with the cold November air, a young black girl stood with her back against the wall. Naomi Carter clutched her grandmother's old leather bag against her chest, her cleaning uniform still damp from mopping the third-floor corridor. She'd been working in this hospital for 2 months, invisible to doctors and patients alike, just another face in the army of night shift cleaners. But she'd been watching Emily Hale, studying her, understanding what no one else seemed to see. A nurse rushed past her, nearly knocking the bag from her hands. "Excuse me," Naomi called out. "The girl in room 4B. The nurse didn't even slow down. Naomi took 3 steps forward, her voice rising. "She's not having a neurological episode. Her body is rejecting. Get back to work." A security guard materialized beside her, his hand on her elbow. "Cleaning staff doesn't belong in this wing after midnight. You don't understand. I know what's wrong with her." The guard's grip tightened. "I'm going to ask you once to return to your assigned floor." Through the glass, Naomi could see Richard Hale, his face a mask of controlled desperation. She locked eyes with him for just a moment. 1 second, where their worlds collided across the barriers of wealth and power and privilege. Then, the guard pulled her away, and the moment shattered. "She's blind because of what you did." Naomi whispered, too quiet for anyone to hear. Not because of sickness, but she'd been too quiet. No one heard the truth that could have saved Emily Hale that night. Not yet. Let me tell you how we got here. 3 years earlier, Emily Hale had been a normal 17-year-old girl. She played tennis at her private academy, spoke 3 languages fluently, and had early acceptance letters from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton sitting on her father's desk. Her biggest concern was whether to go pre-med or pre-law, whether to follow her father into the pharmaceutical industry or forge her own path through corporate law. Then one morning in April, she woke up and couldn't see, not blind like someone who'd lost their sight gradually, not a slow fade into darkness. She went to sleep seeing normally and woke up to absolute, terrifying blackness.
Richard had been in London closing a merger when he got the call. He'd chartered a private jet and been back in New York within 8 hours, bursting into the emergency room at Mount Sinai like a force of nature. "Where's my daughter? Where is Emily?" He'd found her sitting on an examination table, her hands gripping the edges so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her face was turned toward the door, toward his voice, but her eyes looked through him at nothing. "Daddy?" Her voice had been so small, so frightened. "Daddy, I can't see you." Richard had embraced her, feeling her entire body tremble against him. Over her shoulder, he'd locked eyes with the attending physician, a man named Dr. Reeves, who had no idea he was about to face the most intense scrutiny of his career. "What's wrong with my daughter?" Dr. Reeves had cleared his throat. "We're running tests, Mr. Hale. We need to rule out several possibilities. Stroke, tumor, optic neuritis. How long? The tests will take. How long until you fix this?" Dr. Reeves had paused, and in that pause, Richard Hale had felt the first cold touch of real fear. The kind of fear that money couldn't simply buy away. "We'll do everything we can, Mr. Hale." That had been the first of 1,000 such conversations. Tests had come back negative. No tumor, no stroke, no infection, no genetic markers, no trauma. Her optic nerves looked healthy. Her brain scans showed normal activity. Every physical examination suggested that Emily Hale should be able to see perfectly fine, but she couldn't. Dr. Reeves had been the first in a parade of specialists. Neurologists, ophthalmologists, alternative medicine practitioners, shamans from Peru, energy healers from India. Richard had flown in experts from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. He'd paid for experimental treatments in Switzerland, stem cell therapy in Japan, neural regeneration procedures in Germany. Nothing worked. The diagnosis had evolved from temporary to unusual to persistent to finally, grudgingly, unexplained. The medical establishment. The same establishment that Richard's company helped supply with drugs and treatments, had no answers for him. Emily's world had shrunk from the vast expanse of a brilliant future to the confines of their Manhattan penthouse. She learned to navigate by sound and touch, learned to find the bathroom and her bedroom and the kitchen. But she stopped playing tennis, stopped studying, stopped talking about Harvard or Yale or anything beyond the next day, the next hour, the next moment of darkness. Richard had watched his daughter disappear into herself, becoming quieter, smaller, more fragile. He'd hired the best therapists, but Emily barely spoke to them. He'd bought every assistive technology available, but she rarely used them. She existed in a state of patient waiting, as if expecting that one day she'd wake up and the sight would simply return. It never did. If you're watching this from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or anywhere across America, drop a comment right now and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story is keeping you hooked, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, here's where most people's stories would have a happy ending about faith and healing. But this isn't that kind of story. Because what was happening to Emily Hale wasn't natural. It wasn't some mysterious disease that defied medical science. It was a consequence, hidden behind layers of legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements, and Richard Hale's very considerable power to make problems disappear. But consequences, like truth, have a way of surfacing eventually. Naomi Carter had never planned to work at Manhattan General Hospital. She'd grown up in the Bronx, raised by her grandmother after her mother died when Naomi was 14. The official cause of death had been listed as complications from an undiagnosed autoimmune condition, which was medical speak for we don't actually know what killed her, but we need to write something on the death certificate. Naomi knew better. Her mother, Grace Carter, had been a lab assistant at Hale Pharmaceuticals. She'd worked in the research division, helping to develop new treatments for degenerative diseases. Grace had been brilliant. She'd put herself through community college while raising Naomi alone, had earned a position at one of the most prestigious pharmaceutical companies in the world through sheer determination and talent. Then she discovered something she wasn't supposed to know. Naomi remembered the last few months of her mother's life with crystalline clarity. Grace had become nervous, jumpy. She'd started working late, coming home with dark circles under her eyes. She'd stopped talking about her work, which had always been her passion, her pride. One night, Naomi had found her mother sitting at their tiny kitchen table, surrounded by papers covered in chemical formulas and test results. "Mom, what's wrong?" Grace had looked up, and Naomi had never seen her mother look so frightened. "Baby, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you." Grace had grabbed Naomi's hand, gripping it tightly. "Listen to me. If something happens, there's a box in my closet, behind the shoeboxes. Don't open it unless you have to, but if you ever need to understand why, everything's in there. Mom, you're scaring me. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." 2 weeks later, Grace Carter had collapsed at work. She'd been rushed to the hospital, where she'd spent 3 days in a coma before her organs began failing one by one. The doctors had been baffled. Her symptoms didn't match any known disease. It was as if her body had simply turned against itself. Naomi, only 14 and terrified, had sat by her mother's bedside while her grandmother handled the medical decisions. She'd held Grace's hand and whispered prayers and promises and everything she thought might bring her mother back. But Grace never woke up. After the funeral, after the small ceremony attended by neighbors and church friends, after the sympathy casseroles and the empty condolences, Naomi had remembered her mother's words. She'd gone into Grace's closet, moved aside the shoeboxes, and found a metal lockbox hidden in the back corner. Inside were documents, research papers, test results, emails, and a small glass vial filled with a clear liquid. Naomi had been too young to understand everything in that box, but she'd understood enough to know that her mother had been killed for what she'd discovered. Maybe not deliberately murdered, though Naomi had her suspicions, but certainly silenced. And the name on every document, the company behind every email, was Hale Pharmaceuticals, Richard Hale's empire. For 6 years, Naomi had kept that box hidden, moving it from her grandmother's apartment to various storage places as she grew older. She'd finished high school, started community college classes at night while working during the day. She'd taught herself advanced chemistry and biology, following in her mother's footsteps, trying to understand what Grace had been working on when she died. And then, 2 months ago, she'd seen a news article about Richard Hale's daughter, about the mysterious blindness that no doctor could cure, about the millions of dollars spent searching for a treatment. Something in that article had clicked, some connection between the symptoms described and the research in her mother's papers. Naomi had spent 3 sleepless nights cross-referencing Emily Hale's public medical journey with the compound her mother had been developing. The match was impossible to ignore. She'd applied for a cleaning position at Manhattan General Hospital the next day, got hired within a week, and she'd been watching Emily Hale ever since, waiting for the right moment to reveal what she knew. But who would listen to a cleaning girl from the Bronx? Who would believe her over teams of world-renowned doctors? Tonight, watching Emily convulse in the ICU, Naomi realized she couldn't wait anymore for permission to speak the truth. Richard Hale spent that night in a private waiting room adjacent to the ICU. Dr. Morrison had stabilized Emily, for now, but her condition remained critical. The convulsions had been brought under control, but her vital signs were weak, her body seemingly giving up on whatever fight it had been waging for 3 years. "Mr. Hale," Dr. Morrison entered the waiting room, his face grave. "Can we talk?" Richard looked up from where he'd been staring at his hands. "Is she going to die?" Dr. Morrison sat down heavily in the chair across from him. "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. Her body is failing, and we don't understand why. Every treatment we've tried has had minimal effect. It's as if her system is rejecting something, but we can't identify what. There has to be something else we can try. Some treatment we haven't considered, Mr. Hale. We've exhausted every option, every experimental procedure, every cutting-edge therapy. If there was something else, believe me, we would have tried it by now." Richard's hands clenched into fists. "So you're telling me to give up? To let my daughter die? I'm telling you that we've reached the limits of modern medicine. Then, push past those limits. I've given you unlimited resources, unlimited access to anything you need. Use it." Dr. Morrison's expression softened with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Hale, money can't solve every problem. Sometimes the answer simply doesn't exist yet. Don't give me that defeatist. I'm being realistic. Your daughter's condition is unlike anything I've seen in 30 years of practice. The blindness, the gradual deterioration, and now this crisis. Nothing about it follows any known pathology. It's as if something is actively destroying her from the inside, but every test comes back negative." Richard stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, Manhattan glittered with lights. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that his entire world was collapsing in this sterile room. "What if?" Richard said slowly. "The cause isn't natural." Dr. Morrison frowned. "What do you mean? What if Emily was exposed to something? Some chemical or compound that's causing this? We've tested for toxins, Mr. Hale. Environmental factors. Nothing showed up. Test again. Test for everything, even things that seem impossible. Mr. Hale, just do it." Richard's voice cracked. "Please. She's my daughter. My only family. I can't." He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. "I'll order a comprehensive toxicology screening. Every compound we can think of. Thank you." After Dr. Morrison left, Richard sank back into his chair. His phone buzzed. Probably his assistant or board members, or someone wanting a decision on some matter that had seemed important yesterday but meant nothing now. He ignored it. Instead, he thought about what Dr. Morrison had said. Something destroying Emily from the inside. Something that didn't show up on normal tests. Deep in his mind, in a place he'd sealed off years ago, a memory stirred. A project. A trial. Something that had gone wrong. That he'd buried under settlements and legal agreements, and the kind of power that made problems disappear. But he pushed that memory back down. It couldn't be connected. It was impossible. That had been years ago, and all the participants had been compensated. The matter was closed. Wasn't it? Naomi didn't go home that night. After the security guard had escorted her away from the ICU, she'd returned to the third-floor storage closet where the cleaning supplies were kept. She'd pulled out her grandmother's leather bag and retrieved the file she'd brought from home. Copies of her mother's research, the documents that outlined exactly what Hale Pharmaceuticals had been developing 6 years ago. The compound was designated HX237. It had been designed to treat degenerative nerve conditions, specifically targeting myelin regeneration in patients with multiple sclerosis and similar diseases. On paper, it was revolutionary. A treatment that could potentially reverse nerve damage that had previously been considered permanent. But there had been problems in the trials. Naomi spread the documents across an empty desk in the hospital's employee lounge, reading by the dim light of the overhead fluorescents. Her mother's notes were meticulous, tracking the progression of the trial subjects. Initial results had been promising. Patients showed improved motor function, better nerve conductivity. Then the side effects had started. It began with vision problems. Subjects reported blurriness, trouble with depth perception. The research team had noted it but continued the trial. The vision issues were considered minor compared to the potential benefits. But the problems had escalated. 5 subjects developed complete blindness within 6 months of treatment. Their optic nerves, the very neurons the drug was supposed to protect, had begun deteriorating rapidly. Medical intervention had done nothing to stop it. Grace Carter had been part of the team trying to develop a counteragent, something that could reverse the effects of HX237. She'd been close to a solution when the trial had been abruptly shut down. Officially, The project had been discontinued due to insufficient results. The test subjects had been paid settlements ranging from $200,000 to $500,000. Non-disclosure agreements had been signed. The research had been sealed. But Grace had kept her notes. And she'd kept the formula for the counteragent she'd been developing. Incomplete, but close. So close. Naomi traced her finger across her mother's handwriting, the familiar loops and curves that brought back 1,000 memories. In the margins of one document, Grace had written a note to herself. Final synthesis requires plasma binding conformation. Need more time. She'd never gotten that time. Naomi knew what had killed her mother now, after years of research and study. Grace had been exposed to HX-237 during her work developing the counteragent. It had been an accident, a broken vial, a moment of carelessness in the lab. But HX-237 was devastating to neural tissue, and Grace's exposure had been significant. She'd tried to treat herself using the incomplete counteragent, but it hadn't been enough. The compound had ravaged her system, attacking her nervous system until her body simply shut down. And Hale Pharmaceuticals had covered it up, listing her death as natural causes and paying Naomi's grandmother $50,000 to not ask questions. $50,000. That's what her mother's life had been worth to Richard Hale. Now his daughter was dying from the same compound that had killed Grace Carter. And Naomi was probably the only person alive who understood why. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Drop a comment below if you're watching from Houston, Phoenix, Philadelphia, or anywhere else. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This story is about to get even more intense, and you won't want to miss a single moment. The next morning, Richard returned to Emily's bedside. She was awake, barely, her sightless eyes open and staring at nothing. The convulsions had stopped, but she looked frail, diminished, as if the crisis had taken something vital from her. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm here, sweetheart." Richard took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "Am I dying?" The question hit him like a physical blow. No, you're not dying. Dr. Morrison is going to find out what's wrong, and we're going to fix this. You've been saying that for 3 years. And I mean it every time. Emily's hand tightened weakly around his. "I'm tired, Daddy. So tired of being sick and blind and useless." "You are not useless." "What am I then? What's my purpose? I can't go to college. Can't have a career. Can't even take care of myself most days. What am I for?" Richard felt tears burn his eyes. "You're my daughter. That's your purpose. That's enough. Is it?" Emily turned her face toward where she'd calculated his voice was coming from. "Be honest with me. If I weren't your daughter, would you even notice me? Would I matter to anyone? Emily, there's a girl who works here. One of the cleaners. She talks to me sometimes when she's working late." Richard frowned. "What girl?" "I don't know her name. She sounds young. She tells me things while she cleans my room. Stories about her grandmother, about the neighborhood where she grew up. She doesn't treat me like I'm broken." "Sweetheart, you shouldn't be talking to the cleaning staff." "Why not? They're the only people who treat me like a human being instead of a medical mystery." Emily's voice had gained some strength, some of the fire she'd had before the blindness. "Everyone else talks about me like I'm not here, like I'm just a problem to solve. But she talks to me." "What does she talk about?" "Everything. Nothing. Normal things." Emily paused. "Last week, she asked me if I'd ever been in any clinical trials." Richard went very still. "What did you say?" "I said no. Why would I be in a clinical trial? I'm not sick with anything they can identify." "That's right. You're not." But even as Richard said it, he felt that sealed-off memory pushing against the barriers he'd erected. A project. A trial. Years ago, before Emily's blindness. Had she been exposed somehow? It seemed impossible. The trial had been conducted in a secure facility, separate from the main Hale Pharmaceuticals building. Emily had never visited the research labs. Except, Richard's mind raced back. 6 years ago, Emily had been 14, just starting to show interest in the family business. She'd asked to visit his office, to see where he worked. He'd been so proud of her curiosity that he'd arranged a tour of the entire facility, including his breath caught, including the research division, where they'd been working on HX237. Emily had been in that building. She'd walked through those corridors. Had she been exposed somehow? A contaminated surface? A ventilation system that hadn't been properly sealed? It was possible. It was more than possible. Daddy, you got very quiet. Richard forced his voice to remain calm. I'm just thinking about what you said. About the girl who talks to you. She's nice. I hope she comes back. I'm sure she will. But Richard was already making plans. He needed to find this girl, this cleaner who'd been asking questions about clinical trials. He needed to know what she knew, what she suspected. Because if Emily's blindness was connected to HX237, if that truth came out, it wouldn't just destroy Richard's company. It would destroy everything he'd built. The settlements, the cover-ups, the families who'd been paid to keep quiet. And more than that, it would reveal that Emily's blindness was his fault. That he'd exposed his own daughter to a compound that had killed test subjects and lab assistants. That he'd spent 3 years and hundreds of millions of dollars searching for a cure to a problem he'd created. He couldn't let that truth surface, no matter what. Naomi was mopping the 4th floor corridor when she saw Richard Hale stride past with 2 men in dark suits. Security, probably, or lawyers. They moved with purpose toward the hospital administrator's office. She kept her head down, her movements methodical. Just another invisible cleaner. But she could hear their voices as they passed. Want security footage from the past week. Focus on the ICU wing and my daughter's room. Mr. Hale, I'm not sure we can release that without. I'm not asking. My daughter mentioned a cleaner who's been talking to her. I want to know who she is. Naomi's hands tightened on the mop handle. She continued working, finishing the corridor before retreating to the storage closet. Her heart hammered in her chest. He was looking for her. And once he found her, once he learned who she was, the daughter of Grace Carter, he'd know she had the documents. The proof. The truth about HX237. She had to move fast. Naomi pulled out her phone and called her grandmother. Nana? It's me. I need you to do something. Baby, what's wrong? You sound scared. I'm okay, but I need you to go to my apartment. Remember that metal box in my closet? The one I told you never to open. The one from your mama? Yes. I need you to take it to Reverend Washington at the church. Tell him to keep it safe, and if anything happens to me, he needs to give it to a lawyer. Can you do that? Naomi, what's going on? I can't explain right now, but please, Nana. Trust me. There was a pause. Then her grandmother's voice came back firm and strong. I'll do it. But you be careful. You hear me? I will. I love you. Love you too, baby. Naomi ended the call and took a deep breath. The evidence would be safe. Whatever happened next, the truth couldn't be completely buried. Now she just had to figure out how to save Emily Hale without getting herself killed in the process. Are you watching from Dallas, San Antonio, San Diego, or San Jose? Drop your location in the comments. And if you're invested in what happens next, smash that subscribe button. The truth is about to come out, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. For the next 3 days, Naomi avoided Emily's floor entirely. She requested assignment changes, working in different wings of the hospital, but she kept track of Emily's condition through the nursing staff gossip. The girl's deterioration had stabilized, but she remained weak. The toxicology screening Dr. Morrison had ordered was still pending results. On the 4th day, Naomi was cleaning the 2nd floor waiting area when she overheard 2 nurses talking. Did you hear about the Hale girl? Dr. Morrison got the tox screen results back, and nothing. Completely clean. No toxins, no drugs, no chemicals. They even tested for things that aren't normally on the panel. So they're back to square one. Worse than that. Morrison told me privately that he thinks they're losing her. Her system is just shutting down, and they don't know how to stop it. Naomi's chest tightened. She'd been right about the compound she knew she had been. But HX237 wouldn't show up on a standard toxicology screen, even an extensive one. It was a synthetic compound specifically designed to bond with neural tissue. It metabolized differently than normal drugs or toxins. To detect it, they'd need to know exactly what they were looking for. They'd need the chemical signature, the specific markers. They'd need her mother's research. Naomi made a decision. She couldn't hide anymore. Emily Hale was going to die if someone didn't intervene, and Naomi was the only person who understood what was happening. She finished her shift, changed out of her uniform, and went straight to the hospital's main reception desk. "I need to speak with Dr. Morrison." "It's about Emily Hale." The receptionist looked her up and down skeptically. "Dr. Morrison is extremely busy." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have information about her condition. Information that could save her life." "I'm sure you do, honey. We get a lot of people claiming to have miracle cures. I'm not selling anything. I just need 5 minutes of his time." The receptionist sighed. "Leave your contact information and someone will get back to you. Emily Hale doesn't have time for callbacks. She's dying. Security can escort you out if you're going to cause a scene." Naomi leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Tell Dr. Morrison that Grace Carter's daughter has information about a compound called HX237. Tell him that's what's destroying Emily Hale's nervous system. He can verify it with a specialized test, but she doesn't have much time." The receptionist's expression shifted from dismissive to uncertain. "Wait here." She picked up the phone, speaking quietly to someone on the other end. After a moment, she hung up and looked at Naomi with new respect. Or maybe fear. "Dr. Morrison will see you. 6th floor, consultation room B." Naomi took the elevator up, her heart racing. This was it. The moment where she either saved Emily Hale or destroyed herself trying. Dr. Morrison was waiting in the consultation room with another doctor. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. "I'm Dr. Morrison, and this is Dr. Sarah Chen, head of toxicology. You mentioned a compound called HX237. Naomi nodded. "Emily Hale was exposed to it approximately 6 years ago. It's a synthetic compound designed for neural regeneration, but it has devastating side effects on optic nerve tissue." Dr. Chen's expression sharpened. "How do you know about HX237? That project was discontinued and sealed. My mother was Grace Carter. She worked as a lab assistant at Hale Pharmaceuticals on the HX237 trial." Dr. Morrison and Dr. Chen exchanged glances. "Grace Carter," Dr. Morrison said slowly. "Didn't she die of complications from exposure to HX237? Naomi finished. "They covered it up. Paid my grandmother $50,000 and listed it as an autoimmune condition. Those are serious accusations," Dr. Chen said. "They're true. And Emily Hale is dying from the same compound that killed my mother." Dr. Morrison sat down heavily. "Explain everything. From the beginning." Naomi spent the next hour outlining everything she'd discovered. The trial, the side effects, her mother's work on a counteragent, the cover-up. She pulled out copies of Grace's research. She'd been careful to keep one set with her grandmother and one hidden in her apartment. Dr. Chen studied the documents with increasing intensity. "This is incredibly detailed. Your mother was brilliant. She was also murdered for what she knew." "That's a strong claim," Dr. Morrison said carefully. "Is it? She discovered a catastrophic side effect in a drug that Hale Pharmaceuticals had invested hundreds of millions developing. She was developing a counteragent that would expose the problem. Then she conveniently dies, and the cause of death is listed as unknown complications. How is that not murder?" Dr. Morrison and Dr. Chen were silent. Finally, Dr. Chen spoke. "If what you're saying is true, we'd need to run a specific assay to detect HX237 metabolites in Emily's system. That's not a standard test. We'd need to synthesize the detection reagents based on your mother's research. How long would that take? Days at minimum. Maybe a week. Emily doesn't have a week. Dr. Morrison rubbed his face. Let's say you're right about everything. Let's say Emily was exposed to this compound and it's been destroying her nervous system for 3 years. What's the treatment? Your mother's counteragent wasn't finished. Naomi pulled out the last document from her bag. She got close. Really close. I've spent the past 6 years studying her work, teaching myself advanced chemistry. I think I know how to complete the synthesis. You think? I know. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Miss Carter, I appreciate your dedication to your mother's work, but you're talking about administering an untested, incomplete drug to a critically ill patient. That's not just against protocol. It's dangerous and potentially illegal. More dangerous than letting her die. We don't know for certain that she's dying from HX237 exposure. Then run the test. Synthesize the reagents and confirm it. That will take time we don't have. Then we're back to the same problem. Naomi said, her voice rising. Emily Hale is going to die while you follow protocols and cover your asses and protect Richard Hale's reputation. Dr. Morrison held up a hand. Everyone calm down. Dr. Chen, can we fast-track the assay development? Maybe. If we pull resources from other projects. Do it. Morrison, if we're wrong about this, we're going to look like idiots. And if we're right and do nothing, a girl dies. Dr. Morrison stood. I'll handle Richard Hale. You start working on the assay. And Miss Carter. He turned to Naomi. You're not going anywhere. I want you available for consultation. Naomi nodded, relief flooding through her. They were listening. Finally, someone was listening. But the relief was short-lived. Because the door to the consultation room opened and Richard Hale walked in with 2 security guards behind him. His eyes locked onto Naomi, recognition flashing across his face. You, he said. You're Grace Carter's daughter. If you're glued to your screen right now, watching from Jacksonville, Fort Worth, Columbus, or Charlotte, let us know in the comments where you're from. And hit that subscribe button because this confrontation is about to explode, and you need to see how it unfolds. The consultation room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. Richard Hale stood in the doorway, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his expression a careful mask of controlled anger. Dr. Morrison, what is this woman doing in my daughter's consultation? Dr. Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Hale, Miss Carter has information that could be relevant to Emily's condition. Information. Richard's laugh was bitter. Her mother was a disgruntled employee who made wild accusations before she died. Whatever story this girl has told you is likely the same conspiracy theory garbage. Naomi stood, meeting his gaze directly. My mother discovered that your company's drug trial was blinding people. She tried to fix it, and you let her die to cover it up. That's absurd. Your mother died from complications from HX237 exposure. The same compound that's killing your daughter right now. Richard went very still. My daughter was never involved in any trial. She didn't have to be. She just had to be exposed. Naomi pulled out one of the documents. 6 years ago, in May, Emily visited your research facility. There was an incident that day. A contamination S. Continue. 11:39 a.m. Care in the HX237 lab. The ventilation system was briefly compromised. It's all documented in the safety reports that your company buried. Dr. Chen took the document from Naomi, scanning it quickly. Mr. Hale, is this accurate? Was there a contamination incident? Richard's jaw tightened. There are always minor incidents in research facilities. They're contained and resolved according to protocol. This wasn't minor, Naomi said. 3 researchers required decontamination. The lab was shut down for 2 weeks, and Emily Hale walked through that corridor 30 minutes after the incident occurred. That's speculation. It's documented. The security logs show Emily's visitor badge was scanned in the research wing at 2:47 p.m. The contamination alarm went off at 2:15 p.m. The all-clear wasn't given until 3:30 p.m. Dr. Morrison turned to Richard. "Mr. Hale, if there's any possibility that Emily was exposed to a compound that could explain her symptoms, we need to investigate it." "There's no possibility. This is a witch hunt." "Then let us run the test," Naomi said. "If I'm wrong, you can have me arrested for harassment. If I'm right, we can save your daughter's life." Richard stared at her for a long moment. She could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Weighing risks, considering options, planning how to minimize damage. Finally, he spoke. "Fine. Run your test. But when it comes back negative, I want charges filed against this woman for harassment and defamation." "Fair enough," Dr. Morrison said. Richard pointed at Naomi. "And she doesn't go anywhere near my daughter until this is resolved." "Agreed." Richard left, his security guards following. The tension in the room eased slightly. Dr. Chen let out a long breath. "Well, that was pleasant. How long for the assay?" Dr. Morrison asked. "If I pull every favor I have and work through the night, maybe 48 hours. Make it 36. "Morrison, that girl is deteriorating fast. We don't have time to be cautious." Dr. Chen nodded and left with the documents. Dr. Morrison turned to Naomi. "You should go home. Get some rest. This is going to be a long few days." "I'm not going anywhere, Miss Carter. My mother died because no one would listen to her. I'm not leaving until someone listens to me." Dr. Morrison studied her for a moment, then nodded. "There's a resident lounge on the 5th floor. You can wait there. I'll update you as soon as we know anything." Naomi spent the next 36 hours in a state of suspended anxiety. She tried to sleep on the uncomfortable couch in the resident lounge, but mostly just stared at the ceiling, running through her mother's research in her mind, checking and rechecking her calculations for the counteragent synthesis. Doctors came and went, occasionally glancing at her curiously, but not asking questions. She existed in a bubble of waiting, of watching the clock tick toward the moment when everything would either confirm her theory or destroy her credibility completely. On the second night, a young resident brought her coffee and a sandwich. "Dr. Morrison said you've been here for 2 days. You should eat something." "Thanks." The resident hesitated. "Is it true that you figured out what's wrong with Emily Hale?" "Maybe. Everyone's talking about it. About how her father might have caused her blindness." Naomi sipped the coffee. "He didn't do it deliberately. But he covered it up, which is almost worse. Will she be okay? If you're right, I don't know. The damage is extensive. Even if we can stop the progression, I'm not sure we can reverse what's already happened." The resident nodded and left. Naomi returned to staring at the wall, waiting. At hour 37, Dr. Chen burst into the lounge, her face flushed with excitement or fear or both. "We found it. HX237 metabolites in her bloodstream. Not much, but enough to confirm exposure." Naomi stood. "How much damage?" "Extensive neural degradation in the optic pathways. But it's also affecting other systems. Autonomic nervous function, motor control. Another few weeks, and she'll start losing more than just her vision. Then, we need to administer the counteragent now. Hold on. We can't just inject an untested drug into a critically ill patient. You just confirmed she's dying from HX237. What other option is there?" Dr. Chen ran a hand through her hair. "I need to talk to Morrison. And we need to talk to Richard Hale. He'll never agree. It would be admitting that he caused this. He doesn't have a choice. Not if he wants his daughter to live." They found Dr. Morrison in his office, reviewing the test results. His expression was grim. "You were right," he said to Naomi without preamble. "About all of it. What happens now? Now we tell Richard Hale that his daughter is dying from a compound his company developed, and the only possible treatment is an experimental counteragent developed by the woman he paid off to keep quiet. He's going to lose his mind. Probably. But he'll agree. He has to. They were wrong. Richard Hale didn't lose his mind. He went cold. Dr. Morrison presented the test results in the same consultation room where Naomi had first explained her theory. Richard sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table, his expression unreadable. So you're telling me my daughter has been suffering for 3 years because of a compound my company developed? Yes, Dr. Morrison said. And you want to treat her with an experimental drug created by a woman who had no formal training and who died from exposure to the same compound. Grace Carter had extensive training and experience. Naomi interjected. She was brilliant. And she got close to solving this before she died. She was a lab assistant. She was a scientist who your company exploited and then killed. Richard's eyes flashed. I didn't kill anyone. You covered up the trial results. You paid off the victims. You buried the research. And when my mother got too close to exposing it all, she conveniently died and you paid my grandmother to keep quiet. Your mother's death was investigated and ruled accidental exposure. Investigated by who? Your company's medical team, the same people who had every reason to bury the truth. That's enough, Dr. Morrison said. Mr. Hale, regardless of what happened in the past, we have a choice to make now. Your daughter is dying. We've confirmed the cause. And we have a potential treatment. Potential being the key word. You want me to let you inject my daughter with an untested drug based on incomplete research? Yes. And if it kills her? She's dying anyway, Dr. Chen said quietly. At least this gives her a chance. Richard stood and walked to the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. If I agree to this, and it works, the truth about HX237 comes out. The trial. The cover-up. Everything. Yes, Naomi said. It does. My company will be destroyed. I'll face lawsuits, probably criminal charges. Everything I've built will be gone. But your daughter might live. Richard turned to face her. Why are you doing this? You hate me. You blame me for your mother's death. Why help Emily? Naomi met his gaze. Because she's innocent. And because my mother would have wanted me to save her, regardless of who her father is. The silence stretched out, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Finally, Richard spoke. Do it. Whatever you need, whatever resources, just do it. Save my daughter. If you're watching from Indianapolis, Seattle, Denver, or Washington, D.C., drop a comment below. And if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and share this video. The climax is coming, and you won't believe what happens next. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Dr. Chen and a team of chemists worked to synthesize the counteragent based on Grace Carter's research and Naomi's calculations. Naomi stayed with them the entire time, guiding the process, checking each step against her mother's notes. This is insane, one of the chemists muttered. We're synthesizing a drug based on 6-year-old research from incomplete notes. It's all we have, Naomi said. And if it doesn't work, then Emily Hale dies, and we'll have tried everything we could. The synthesis took 8 hours. Another 2 hours were spent on purity testing and stability analysis. The resulting compound was a clear liquid, almost identical to the vial Naomi's mother had kept in her hidden box. Dr. Morrison called them all into a conference room. Before we proceed, everyone needs to understand the risks. This is not an approved treatment. We're essentially conducting an experimental procedure with minimal safety data. We've reviewed Grace Carter's research, Dr. Chen said. Her animal studies showed promising results. The compound successfully reversed HX237 damage in mouse models. Mice aren't humans. No, but it's the best data we have. Dr. Morrison turned to Naomi. You're sure about this? About the synthesis, the dosing, everything? As sure as I can be without formal trials. My mother got this close. I've verified her work, extended it, corrected for the variables she didn't have time to test. It should work. Should isn't certainty. Nothing in life is certain. Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. I'll talk to Mr. Hale. If he consents, we'll proceed tonight. Richard Hale stood by his daughter's bedside, holding her hand. Emily was asleep, her breathing shallow, her face pale against the white hospital pillow. She looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile. Dr. Morrison entered quietly. "Mr. Hale? We're ready. Tell me honestly. What are her chances?" "I don't know. The compound could reverse the neural damage, or it could do nothing, or it could make things worse. Those aren't great odds. They're better than the alternative, which is watching her die over the next few weeks." Richard closed his eyes. "She's all I have. My wife died when Emily was 5. It's been just us ever since. If I lose her, then let us try to save her." Richard nodded. "Do it." The procedure was remarkably simple. An IV infusion, administered slowly over the course of an hour. Emily remained asleep throughout, unaware that she was receiving a treatment developed by the daughter of a woman her father's company had destroyed. Naomi watched from the observation room, her hands pressed against the glass. Dr. Chen stood beside her. "How long until we know if it worked?" "Hours, maybe days. Neural regeneration isn't instantaneous. But if it works, we'll see improvement in her blood work first. Reduced inflammatory markers, improved nerve conductivity. The vision might take longer to return. And if it doesn't work?" Dr. Chen was silent. They waited through the night. Emily's vital signs remained stable. Her breathing improved slightly around 3 a.m. At 6 a.m., she woke up. "Daddy?" Her voice was stronger than it had been in days. Richard, who'd been dozing in the chair beside her bed, jerked awake. "I'm here. Sweetheart. I feel different. Less tired." "That's good. That's very good. What happened? What did the doctors do?" Richard hesitated, then took her hand. "They gave you a treatment. Something experimental. Is it going to work?" "We don't know yet." Emily was quiet for a moment. "The girl, the one who cleans my room. Is she here?" "Why do you ask?" "I want to thank her. For talking to me. For treating me like a person. I'll see if she's available." Richard found Naomi still in the observation room, watching Emily through the glass. "She's asking for you." Naomi turned, surprised. "Me? She wants to thank you for talking to her. She doesn't know what I did. What I'm trying to do." "No. But you've been kind to her when most people treated her like a medical curiosity. That matters." Naomi followed Richard into Emily's room. The girl's face turned toward the door at the sound of footsteps. "Is that her?" "The cleaning girl. My name is Naomi." "Naomi. I like that name." Emily smiled. "Thank you. For the stories. For treating me like I'm normal. You are normal. You're just going through something difficult. That's a nice way of saying I'm blind and dying." "You're not dying. Not anymore." Emily's expression shifted to confusion. "What do you mean?" Naomi glanced at Richard, who nodded slightly. "I mean that we figured out what was making you sick, and we're trying to fix it." "You're a doctor?" "No, but my mother was a scientist. She was working on a cure for something very similar to what you have." "Did it work?" "Her cure? She never got to find out. She died before she could finish it." Emily's hand reached out blindly. Naomi took it, surprised by the girl's grip. "But you finished it." "For her. I'm trying to. Then I hope it works. For both of us." The next 48 hours were agonizing. Emily's condition stabilized, then began to improve incrementally. Her blood work showed reduced inflammation. Her nerve conductivity tests showed subtle improvements. But her vision remained dark. On the third day, Dr. Chen pulled Naomi aside. "The compound is working. We're seeing cellular regeneration in the optic nerve tissue. But the damage was so extensive. Will she see again? I don't know. Maybe partially. Maybe never. We won't know until the regeneration process is complete." "How long?" "Weeks. Possibly months." Naomi felt her hope deflate. She'd been so focused on saving Emily's life that she hadn't fully considered the possibility that the blindness might be permanent despite treatment. On the fourth day, Emily complained of headaches. Sharp, stabbing pains behind her eyes. "That's actually a good sign," Dr. Morrison said. "It means the nerves are regenerating. Dead nerves don't hurt." On the 5th day, Emily woke up screaming. Naomi was in the hospital cafeteria when she heard the code called over the intercom. She ran to Emily's floor, arriving just as Dr. Morrison rushed into the room. Emily was thrashing in the bed, her hands covering her face, her screams echoing down the corridor. "It hurts. Oh God, it hurts. Emily, I need you to calm down," Dr. Morrison said. "Tell me where it hurts." "My eyes. They're burning." Dr. Chen administered a sedative, and Emily's screams faded to whimpers. Richard held his daughter, his own face twisted with anguish. "What's happening to her?" he demanded. "Neural regeneration is painful," Dr. Chen explained. "The nerves have been dormant for 3 years. As they wake up, she'll experience significant discomfort. Can you give her something stronger? For the pain, we're managing it as best we can. But we have to be careful. Too much sedation could interfere with the regeneration process." Emily's episodes continued over the next week. Periods of intense pain followed by exhausted sleep. Naomi visited her every day, sitting by her bedside, talking to her through the worst moments. "Tell me about your mother," Emily said one afternoon, her voice weak from the latest episode. "She was strong, brilliant. She fought for what was right, even when it cost her everything." "Do you hate my father? For what happened to her?" Naomi considered the question. "I did. For a long time, I hated him with everything I had. But now..." She paused. "Now I think he's just a man who made terrible choices and is finally facing the consequences. He loves me. Whatever else he is, he loves me. I know. I'm glad you're here, Naomi. Even if I never see again, I'm glad I got to know you." On the 14th day, something changed. Emily woke up and lay very still, her face turned toward the window. "Daddy?" Her voice was strange, uncertain. Richard, who'd been reading in the chair beside her bed, looked up. "What is it, sweetheart?" I think I see something." Richard's book hit the floor. "What do you see? Light? Maybe. I'm not sure. It's so faint." Dr. Morrison was called. He conducted a series of tests, shining lights in Emily's eyes, asking her to track movements she couldn't see. "There's definitely neural activity," he said. "Your optic nerves are responding to stimuli. Does that mean I'll see again? It means you're healing. How much vision you regain, and how quickly, we won't know for some time." But it was hope. Real, tangible hope. If you're watching from El Paso, Nashville, Detroit, or any other city in America, drop your location in the comments below and hit that subscribe button. You're about to witness a miracle, and you don't want to miss this moment. Over the next month, Emily's vision slowly returned. First light and dark, then shapes, then colors. Muted at first, then gradually brightening. The first time she saw her father's face clearly, they both cried. "You look older," she said, tracing his features with her fingers. 3 years will do that. "You look tired. I've been worried." "I know." The first time she saw Naomi, Emily stared for a long moment. "You're beautiful." Naomi laughed, surprised. "I don't know about that." "You are." I imagined what you slowly returned. First light and dark, then shapes, then colors. Muted at first, then gradually brightening. The first time she saw her father's face clearly, they both cried. "You look older," she said, tracing his features with her fingers. 3 years will do that. "You look tired. I've been worried." "I know." The first time she saw Naomi, Emily stared for a long moment. "You're beautiful." Naomi laughed, surprised. "I don't know about that." "You are." I imagined what you looked like, but you're even better." Emily's recovery continued, but the truth about HX237 couldn't be contained. Hospital staff talked. Rumors spread. A journalist got wind of the story and started investigating. Richard met with Naomi and Dr. Morrison in a private conference room 6 weeks after Emily's treatment. "The story is going to break," Richard said flatly. "I've had calls from the New York Times, the Washington Post, even 60 Minutes. They know about the trial, the cover-up, everything. What are you going to do? Naomi asked. Tell the truth. All of it. Richard looked older, worn down by weeks of stress and guilt. I'm going to give a statement admitting what happened. The failed trial, the cover-up, the settlements, everything. You'll be destroyed, Dr. Morrison said. I know. But it's what I deserve. Richard turned to Naomi. I can't undo what happened to your mother. I can't give you back those years. But I can make sure the truth comes out, that the victims are acknowledged, that this never happens again. And your company will likely collapse. I'm already facing criminal investigations for fraud and negligent homicide. I'll probably go to prison. Good, Naomi said quietly. Richard nodded. Yes, good. 2 weeks later, Richard Hale held a press conference. Standing at a podium before a sea of cameras and reporters, he told the truth about HX237. About the trial that had blinded 5 people. About the cover-up. About Grace Carter's death. About Emily's exposure. I am responsible for all of this, he said, his voice steady despite the cameras and lights. I prioritized profit over safety. I buried evidence and silenced victims. I let a brilliant woman die rather than admit my company's failure. And I nearly killed my own daughter because of it. The press conference lasted 2 hours. Richard answered every question, admitted every failure, accepted every consequence. Hale Pharmaceuticals collapsed within a month. The stock price plummeted. Criminal charges were filed. Lawsuits erupted from former trial participants and their families. But Richard did one thing before it all fell apart. He established a foundation, funded with the majority of his personal fortune, dedicated to supporting victims of pharmaceutical testing gone wrong and their families. The Grace Carter Foundation. Naomi was offered the position of director. She accepted. 6 months after Emily's treatment, Naomi stood in the foundation's office. A modest space in Manhattan, nothing like the gleaming towers of Hale Pharmaceuticals. Emily sat at the desk across from her, reviewing grant applications. This one looks good, Emily said, her vision now fully restored. A support group for families affected by medication injuries. Approve it. Emily made a note. You know, I've been thinking about going back to school. Yeah, I want to study neuroscience. Maybe help develop better testing protocols. Make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. Your father would be proud. He's in prison. Still. Emily was quiet for a moment. I visit him every week. He always asks about you. What do you tell him? That you're doing good work. That you're helping people. That you haven't forgiven him, but you've moved past the hate. That's accurate. Have you? Moved past it? Naomi considered the question. I think so. Holding on to that anger was destroying me. He's facing consequences. The truth is out. My mother's work is helping people. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. 1 year after Emily's treatment, Naomi received a letter. It was from Richard Hale, written from the federal prison where he was serving a 7-year sentence for fraud and negligent homicide. Dear Naomi, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that not a day passes that I don't think about your mother, about what she discovered, about what I did to bury it. Emily tells me you're doing remarkable work with the foundation, that you're helping families that my company destroyed. I can't adequately express how much that means to me. Your mother was brilliant. She saw the truth when no one else would. She fought for what was right, even when it cost her everything. You are so much like her. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for what I did. I know it won't be enough, but I will try. Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for giving me the chance to do at least some good with what remains of my life. Richard Hale. Naomi folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. She didn't need his apology, but she was glad to have it. That evening, she visited her mother's grave. It had been years since the last visit. Life had been too busy, too full of fighting and surviving and trying to expose the truth. I did it, Mom, she said quietly, placing flowers on the headstone. I finished your work. I saved that girl, just like you would have wanted me to. The cemetery was quiet, except for the distant sound of traffic. Naomi sat by the grave as the sun set, remembering her mother's laugh, her strength, her conviction that truth mattered more than power. You were right, Naomi continued, about everything. The truth doesn't need permission. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it. 3 years after Emily's treatment, the Grace Carter Foundation had helped over 200 families affected by pharmaceutical testing problems. Naomi had testified before Congress about the need for better safety protocols and independent testing oversight. New regulations had been passed, inspired by Grace Carter's story. Emily graduated with honors from Columbia, majoring in neuroscience. She'd written her senior thesis on ethical testing protocols and drug development, dedicating it to Grace Carter, the woman who died to protect patients like her. Richard Hale was released from prison after serving 5 years of his 7-year sentence. He emerged into a world that had largely forgotten him, his empire destroyed, his wealth gone, his reputation in ruins. But Emily was waiting for him, and so was Naomi. They met in a small cafe in Queens, neutral territory, away from the ghosts of Manhattan's pharmaceutical district. "Thank you for coming," Richard said, looking older and smaller than he'd been before prison. "Emily asked me to," Naomi replied. "I know. And I appreciate it." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. "I've been offered a position," Richard finally said. "Teaching medical ethics at a community college in Brooklyn. The pay is terrible, and the hours are worse, but it's honest work," Naomi finished. "Yes, good. I'll never be able to make up for what I did. To your mother, to the trial participants, to all the people my company hurt. But I can try to teach the next generation to be better than I was." Naomi studied him. The arrogance was gone, worn away by prison and consequences and the weight of his choices. What remained was just a tired man trying to do some good with whatever life he had left. "My mother would have liked that," she said finally. She believed people could change, that redemption was possible, even for those who'd done terrible things. "Do you believe that?" "I'm starting to." Emily joined them a few minutes later, bringing coffee and pastries. She sat beside her father, taking his hand. "I have news," she said, smiling. "I got accepted to the neuroscience PhD program at Columbia. Full scholarship." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "And Naomi's agreed to be on my thesis committee. We're going to study neural regeneration protocols together." Naomi raised her eyebrows. "I am, you are. You know more about this than most professors. I'm not qualified to. You saved my life. You finished your mother's work. You're more qualified than anyone." They talked for hours that afternoon, planning Emily's research, discussing the foundation's work, mapping out a future that none of them could have imagined 4 years earlier when Emily lay dying in the ICU. As they were leaving, Richard stopped Naomi. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Why did you do it? Save Emily. You could have let her die. Let me suffer the consequences of my actions. No one would have blamed you." Naomi was quiet for a long moment, watching Emily walk ahead of them toward the subway. "Because my mother taught me that healing matters more than revenge. That saving a life is always worth it, regardless of who that life belongs to." She turned to face Richard. "And because I wanted to prove that truth doesn't destroy. It reveals. It gives us the chance to choose who we become in the face of what we've done. And who have I become? I don't know yet. But you have the rest of your life to figure it out." 5 years after Emily's treatment, Naomi stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., accepting an award from the National Institutes of Health for her work on pharmaceutical safety advocacy. Emily sat in the front row, her father beside her. Both were smiling. "This award isn't mine alone," Naomi said into the microphone. "It belongs to my mother, Grace Carter, who saw the truth when no one else would. It belongs to the families who've trusted the foundation with their stories. It belongs to everyone who believes that doing what's right matters more than doing what's profitable. The applause was long and genuine. Naomi stepped down from the podium and Emily embraced her. "Your mother would be so proud," Emily whispered. "So would yours." Emily laughed. "My mother died when I was 5. I barely remember her. I meant your father. Despite everything, despite all his failures, he raised a daughter with integrity and compassion. That counts for something." That evening, back in New York, Naomi visited her mother's grave one more time. It had become a ritual whenever she achieved something significant, a way of sharing her victories with the woman who'd made them possible. "I did it, Mom. I finished what you started. I helped create a system that protects people instead of exploiting them. I turned your death into something that saves lives." A gentle breeze rustled through the cemetery trees. Naomi smiled, imagining it was her mother's response. The truth didn't need power to win. She continued, echoing the words that had guided her through the darkest moments. "It just needed someone brave enough to speak it. You taught me that. And I promise I'll never stop speaking it." As the sun set over the cemetery, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Naomi felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The fight wasn't over. It never would be, not as long as greed and power threatened to silence truth. But she'd proven that one person, armed with conviction and courage, could make a difference. She'd saved a life, exposed corruption, built something meaningful from ashes and anger. And somewhere, she believed, her mother was watching, proud. Now, before we end this incredible journey, I want to hear from you. Whether you're watching from Memphis, Portland, Oklahoma City, Las Vegas, Louisville, Baltimore, Milwaukee, Albuquerque, Tucson, Fresno, Sacramento, Mesa, Kansas City, or anywhere else in this great nation, drop a comment below and tell us where you're from. Share your thoughts on this story. Has it moved you? Has it made you think differently about truth, justice, and the power of one person to change everything? If this story kept you glued to your screen until the very end, then I need you to do 3 things right now. First, smash that subscribe button. We have more stories like this. Stories about courage, justice, and the triumph of truth over power. Second, hit that like button and let us know you want more content that challenges you to think and feel deeply. And third, share this video with everyone you know. Share it with your family, your friends, your co-workers. Because stories like this need to be heard. Truth like this needs to be spread. Remember, the truth doesn't need permission. It doesn't need power or wealth or influence. It just needs someone brave enough to speak it. Someone like Naomi Carter. Someone like Grace Carter. Someone maybe like you. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right. Keep speaking truth to power. Keep believing that one person can change the world. Because they can. And maybe that person is you. Subscribe. Comment. Like. Share. The truth is waiting to be told.